process. Yeah.
All right, well, let me just start right here then. Hi, Crystal.
Hi,
Thank you
Maya.
for coming, for taking the time in this crazy time of the year, in this
Hmm.
crazy week. I said Crystal, but you're also known as DJ Etta.
Yes.
So let's start really briefly with your name. Where does the name Etta come from?
Etta was my maternal grandmother. And when I started playing, I think that um, I don't know why it struck me to use her name. She was kind of in the last year of her life, but she was the matriarch of our family, and I think that's how I feel when I DJ. You know what I mean? And then my Crystal Minor is the name I use when I write, and Minor is my paternal grandmother's last name. So in each of those practices, it's just kind of like going back to my grandma's.
Oh, that's beautiful. I was not aware of that. That's beautiful. And yeah, in both practices they're always there and
Mm-hmm.
connected. That's very nice. We just maybe we can come back to that, but we just spoke while you were walking in all of the the challenges that come with movement week, which is, if you watch this video, it's past this week, but yeah, it's usually busy and then comes with challenges, but just besides what is like really going on, you don't have to tell the specifics. I wonder how you generally prepare for a busy week like that with all the things you have going on. You don't have to go into details. I was just like curious of like um how somebody local like you like gets ready for all the things that happen during that week.
um, about a week and a half ago, I went on vacation. I went to Lake Michigan. I grew up on that lake, and I feel like just kind of going back to her and centering myself through that, and like nature and good food and friends was something I needed to do to ground myself before this. And kind of in the days leading into this, it kind of feels like you're like the captain of a ship and you see like a big storm ahead, and you're like, okay, well, I have this boatload of people who I have to get through this storm like safely. So let me not lose my mind and let me just kind of like focus. And then when the storm breaks, maybe I can process it. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, calm your mind before the storm. I
Hmm.
got it. Let's speak about going further than to when you decided to on your DJ name, about your musical journey and your musical upbringing. You just said you were raised in at Lake Michigan,
Uh,
or from that's where you're from. You can tell me
yeah.
all the things about it as much as you want to tell me.
I grew up in Muskegon, Michigan. It's a small town on the west side of the state, but I was born down south, and then relocated there when my mom got sick when I was younger. And then, I mean, I really think I'm one of the most unlikely people to be in this pathway because music growing up to me felt like something. My sister is extremely musical. She is a prolific drummer, singer, and I was always kind of the kid who was offbeat next to her. So I found myself attracted to a lot of, I mean, when I was coming up, like emo, screamo music, listening to music with my grandma, but she's always Trina Minor. It's where I get the Minor name. But she was always really eclectic in her music taste. Like we were just as likely to listen to like Rod Stewart as we were to the Temptations. So it's one of those things where I always found solace in music, and through like my childhood, it just was something I did by myself. Going to LimeWire, downloading music from the Gorillas. There was a record store up the street from my house, but I'd go and buy CDs because that was what was, the most popular method of listening to music when I was coming up. Um, when I was about 16, a friend of mine, we snuck out from her place and drove to Grand Rapids, which is about 45 minutes from the town we were in, and saw this like emo band play. And I just was like, oh my God, like live music. is so incredible. And then it kind of just started to flow out from there when I went to college in 2012. My roommates were like, hey, like, there's all these like indie small bands who are traveling who need a place to play or need a place to stay. So we started hosting a lot of artists um, that way. And then after the show would end, I'm trying to think of like in the early days we hosted like Porches as a kind of like one of the bigger acts who kind of ended up um, going a little bit more mainstream. But it must have been 25 to 50 over the couple years that we were doing it. But after the party, everyone would still be hanging out. I'd make the playlist. And yeah, and then the first time that I ever DJ'd was for um, this community center. They were throwing an event called a Queer Seniora, which was an opportunity for adults who hadn't been able to be out in their youth to come and kind of celebrate um, like their child self or their young self. So in exchange for buying me my first like little controller, I played the party and it just kind of went from there. But like I said, it's a very unlikely journey the entire way through. I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, my mom's a singer, my dad's a musician. I'm like, nobody in my family could have seen this coming. And I still can't believe it a lot of the time. But I just know because it's, I don't want to say it's like worked out for me, but it's something that it's a decision where I've chosen to dedicate my life to it, that like it must be for a reason that even if I don't comprehend it now, that it's my fate, you know.
Yeah, I went to your link tree or Instagram, and your it you can only put like a certain amount of numbers, and it says DJ, writer, thinker, and I hope we can get. I'm sure we can cover every part. And you just spoke of like how the beginnings of DJing and how it's a part, and like you said, you might have not seen it coming, but maybe it was chosen for you, and I wonder, like, do you, at this point now, do you feel more comfortable to call yourself, or how would you describe yourself primarily if somebody asks, so what do you do? You know how people ask, hey, what do you do?
Yeah, I feel like I always chuckle because I'm like, I mean, what don't I do? But um, the baseline, I'm a DJ and I'm a writer, and those two things are 50-50 in my heart and in my practice. Um, and then everything else that kind of comes with it is just a part of like the world building that I think I'm attempting to do for both myself and for the other Black women who I work with and who I love. And yeah.
Continuing on that, like you just told us the first party that you played, how did you then continue to DJ and eventually then move to Detroit, or like, I don't know when it was or how many years that was. Just a comparison of like from when you started or like first played for other people to now, and you've also played not just in Detroit but also New York and then even internationally. What are your sentiments to the different places or your experiences there?
Um, I feel like in some ways DJing is a way for me to inform my writing. I feel like it's like the practice part of like theory that I think around and that I write around. But like the origin story of it, I guess, is I was DJing a little bit locally in Lansing, and I was taking a class on music production. And for one of the, I still wish I knew how my professor even knew what like UR was, because he wasn't really a techno guy at all. But for one of the courses, he brought in John Collins and Cornelius Harris from Submerge, and I was their PA for the day. Like I think I like brought them their hamburgers, and I just was like in charge of like getting them from stage A to stage B or whatever. And I just remember thinking like, who are these guys and what is this about? Because I had no knowledge of Detroit techno. Like I had some friends who I'd go down to the city with and like go dance at like Temple Bar or something some weekends, and but it just I didn't understand kind of. I was gonna say if I could go back 10 years from now and be like, girl, it's about to get crazy, like, I might, but at the time I just was like, these people seem to be able to combine music, which I was becoming more increasingly passionate about, and activism, which I was very passionate about, in a way that makes sense. So they left, and I emailed John Collins, and he says he doesn't remember this email, but I know he does. And I was like, hey, can I work for you? He didn't respond. But I added him on Facebook. And at some point, I think about a year later, Submerge was doing a workshop in tandem with Trezor. And I was working at a small coffee shop out in Lansing. And I saw it on Facebook the morning that it was happening, and I was like, I gotta go to this. So, and this was I had no idea what Trezor was. I was like, this is just a way for me to connect with those guys I had met wearing all black who couldn't give me a straight answer about what they do. But like I said, it just because it's such an unlikely thing, my passion for it wasn't really coming from me thinking about anything in terms of like a career, but it was just it was more of a calling. So I found someone to cover the rest of my shift at the coffee shop. I drove out here, I took the class, and then I ended up kind of just working with them and kind of growing through music stuff. I mean, it wasn't really a linear journey. I DJ'd for a little bit, and then I was like, okay, maybe this isn't for me because I'm a Leo, but I have really bad stage fright. So it's just like, it's intense. It's intense when you get up there and when you're in such a intense like energy exchange with people. And I also feel like my style of playing music is not really, you have to just like listen and like really get into it. Like I'm like I like slow music. I like deep songs. So yeah, I started doing some work over at Submerge. I moved to Detroit 6, 7 years ago. I remember it was like the weekend after movement. And I was like, I think I'd gone to see like DJ Minx play at the Detroit stage, and like she was up there with all of her girlfriends, and I'm like, this is so cool. Like, I don't know. And it still felt like such a big mystery to me, but like it was a mystery I was really drawn to. So then I think in terms of my progress as a DJ, I just kept playing, and then I started collecting records and really found something within that felt, I don't know, like, I don't want to say therapeutic, but therapeutic to me. And then I've just kind of continued onward with it. Yeah, it's a it's a lot of pieces, and the whole time I'm writing about it, I'm interviewing women in town, women in techno, and also just artists in general because I had such a curiosity. And yeah.
It's the way you speak about all your different practices. They're all very tied together. And also like all my questions, I feel like my little cheat sheet. I kind of like, wrote them out, but I'm trying to see how best I can ask you the different points because I can see how tied it is together. You just spoke about Submerge and the tour in the museum, and I know you give tours. So maybe we just stick there for a second. How is the work now that you do? I don't want to say for or with the whole team, the whole next door. Let's.
I actually ended up leaving Submerge last year in
Oh, okay. I
August.
wasn't aware of that.
It's
Okay.
it's okay. It just was like a different chapter in my life. I feel like I was there for what was it, like 4 years, and like learned a lot. But I think that ultimately, if I'm gonna like kind of go forward into the world, it has to kind of be being able to build a thing on my own, which is really scary, but is something that's always been a part of um, my life path. So then I'm now just focusing all my efforts into A, just myself, self care, B, my writing, and C, like Blueprint, which is my party and label that I do with AK Yasmina and Black Moonchild. Yeah, it's scared. It's like you like a baby bird leaving the nest, but I knew it was time, you know. But it really informed. It was like a crash course uh, in music and industry and community and all of these things, like really complicatedly like folded into one another. Um, but I think also just it being like a really male dominated space, I understood that like there's not like a utopia anywhere where you can be a woman and be like all of these things, but I knew that like my practice had to kind of move on from a space like that to really be understood and actualized.
I was gonna ask you as a follow up question. Like, you said you left, but I'm sure within those, you said 4 years, all the experiences that you had, but also the things that you took away from it, which you just touched on a little bit. But I come back a little bit differently to another question later. I want to get into your writing since this is a really important part. How it feels like maybe writing was before DJing, and then like what kind of not what kind of writing, but like what kind of part does it have in your life? And when I say not what do you write about, because I think it's very music related, but not just the music itself, everything that comes with the music and is behind the music.
I mean, I've been a writer since I could write. It's something I've done since I was a little girl. And I think there's this like quote from like Greg Tate where he talks about like a good music critic or writer is like an insider and outsider in whatever kind of like scene or beat that they're writing around. So I think that for me, I've always felt like one foot in as a participant and the other as a spectator. And the way that I write, I think, tries to acknowledge the invisible force that we're kind of like all a part of and the culture that we're all a part of. And it can be really challenging because I think music criticism over the past 10 years has taken a really big nosedive. I think that it kind of became about more of a payola thing. Like, if you want to get like a gut write up, then you're kind of like besties with this journalist, or if you want this publication to notice you, like, you have to be working with this other person who they're like in relation with. And I also think social media kind of provided like artists like a bit of a platform to engage directly with music critics in a way that I don't know if it really feels good. So kind of coming of age during that time where I'm seeing kind of like major publications are like clearly not having their finger on the pulse anymore. But I'm also seeing a lot of bloggers who I really love. Um, I'm still figuring out my voice as like a writer. I think a cultural writer is how I would describe myself. But I know that there's like countless like stories that are kind of really waiting to be unearthed. And I think that like in my more creative writing, there are stories within myself that I'm still kind of putting together. Um, the most recent thing I released was with a zine from Slick Down in New York. Shout out Reg. And it was about something called like an enforcer, right? Which is in sports industry, hockey industry, like you have an enforcer who's responsible for kind of keeping the other team in check. That's usually the guy who goes and fights on the skates, you know what I mean? And I think in the music industry, there's a functionality to it too, where we're kind of being enforced into a certain way of thinking, of being, and I want to explore that deeper. But yeah, it's interesting because I don't think it's ever occurred to me that my writing, or it didn't occur to me when I started that me writing about this could be perceived. Do you know what I mean? Perceived by other people, other DJs, and um, that if that perception wasn't how they wanted to be perceived, it could affect my like DJ career. But it's also it's not worth it to have a DJ career if I can't write. Um, and yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of thoughts.
It's a lot of thoughts. Where do obviously you just mentioned what your last writing that was released, but also I'm trying to get my thoughts together. Um, you write something, and there's so many different avenues these days that things can be read. Um, so I'm sure there's more in your vault that you've written than actually for that people would be able to read online or wherever. To the point of you mentioned music criticism, right? The I would say former traditional media, or like forms of media that we, or I at least, was reading about music, or like, the album reviews and all the things, and how that's what I remember, right? They don't necessarily exist anymore. I'm sure there are somewhere online, if a publication has an online, if they exist still in some shape or form. But then there's also, like you mentioned, social media, but then it seems less criticism, more complaining, or like more giving opinions rather than like specific or constructive criticism, if I can say that. Or there are the think pieces on an Instagram post or like a social media. So I think that, how do you make sure that you're writing, I was going to say yourself, but then more specifically your writing does, for lack of better terms, doesn't get lost in that media soup of everybody can put stuff online and write about stuff? I hope that question made sense.
I'm gonna try to digest it and put it back out to you. I was at a point like working with a number of publications and putting a lot of things out, and then I had an incident happen where I wrote something about an artist, and their agent like previewed the piece and asked for it to be taken out, and I'm like, what kind of, like, what is this, you know what I mean? And so I kind of like walked away from publishing my writing, to recenter and focus on kind of making sure I was writing what felt really true. And I'm still like figuring out kind of a platform for it, but it's I write and I submit when people seek me out mostly. And I go to, and if I am going to like submit towards something, it's something that is usually not about being spread to a wide audience, but just to an audience who can really receive it. Um, so there's an intentionality with that where I'm just like, I'd rather like 10 people read something I write and like love it, connect with it than 1,000 people. Because 1,000 people probably don't have taste.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point. I lost my train of thoughts because I could hear some more voices out there. I haven't even mentioned where we are in case if you watched some previous episodes, this is not the usual set. We're at UMA in Detroit. Shout out to Gito and everyone who lets me use the space for this week to record some interviews. But what I wanted to say to that point is, where do you, oh yeah, now I found it. When you write, either for publications that seek you out, or you personally, I don't know if you do that actually, like putting it online via a newsletter or like a, what is it called, Substack newsletter or a blog, do you think of what happens with it 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, in the sense of archiving or the longevity of just, or the existence of your work, so to speak? I I always bring up the example of a lot of pieces like MTV put up or just taken down the website, or was it Vibe magazine? I don't know, where just so much of history is gone from with one swipe, and or like the National Archives these days just getting scrapped. I'm wondering what, yeah, obviously, do you think about it, or do you actively seek out ways for you to preserve and archive the work?
I think growing up in the digital age, like the impermanence of everything I do has always been just a reality of life. I have hard copies of most of my writing. I'll print them out or they're on my computer. But when I write something and I release it, I'm letting it go. You know what I mean? In whatever time or age that it's found or it's lost, it's just a part of being a part of the current time. Even though myself as a writer, finding like old blog posts from like Ash Lauren or like Josie Rebel, who used to do a blogging thing, I think on Tumblr, have been like really important to myself and my practice. But yeah, it's if you find it at some point in the future by Googling this and it leads you to this page and the link's broken and but you still see the words or something, like that's fine with me too. I'm not very precious. Like once I put it out, it's out.
Okay, so you're not like holding on to it in a way. I don't know. Maybe I could find a comparison of like people who release music, and then they're like, once it's out, and then I don't have to wait 10 years or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of like a big appeal of putting on a record is in 30 years someone might find it in a dollar bin at a record store in Kansas City. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's probably not still a connection that the artist has to that particular record, but it's just a part of the world now.
Okay. Let's then go back to your party that you just mentioned, Blueprint. What can you tell us about that party? How it started, the name. I'm interested in the name as well. And then, since it's Movement Week, how it's been a couple of years now that you've done this party. I think there was an anniversary also recently, I think, or
This is the 4th year that we've done the movement afters, and I think this July is gonna mark the 5th year that we've been doing the party, which is nothing in like party world, but it's also really difficult, I think, to get a party past a year. There's a lot of parties who started around when we were starting who aren't around anymore, but I think there was an intentionality when we founded it. 3 originals, myself, aka Black Moonchild, we all met each other through this like DJ collective that Jim had called Every Woman. And then that group kind of splintered off into different subgroups. And I think we were like, okay, like, there's not really representation for Black women here. Let's go start our own thing. And I remember we were like at Honest John's and we were going through a list of names, and I can't remember who said blueprint, but then we all started playing around with it. It's like, okay, it's the print. You know what I mean? Like, this is the format, the layout, it was really silly, but we just kind of stuck with it. And I think it's found meaning over the years and changed meaning over the years. I always call it's more of an experiment than anything else. Like, it can take a lot of different forms because artistically we're all very different. And then I think last year we brought on Yasmina from Minneapolis to like be like the 4th. We're not a collective, actually. I hate when people call it collective, because to me it's just, I feel like crew doesn't really fit it either. And while our decision making is collective, it's not something where
it's not like you're not thrown together.
Exactly. It is. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. We're serious about what we're doing, and I think we have ambition and goals in what we do. And I think that a lot of women, especially Black women, are kind of like put into positions to always be altruistic in what they produce. And we focus more artistically than altruistically, if that makes sense. And just as creatives, to create generally from a place of like exploration is really important for us to do our party and kind of like the label end of it, which we're really trying to get off the ground in the next year or so. Yeah, she's her own thing. She is her own thing, but I'm really proud of us. On Friday, which is tomorrow, today's Thursday, we're putting together a party, and it's like 7 hours, and we have like Juliana Huxtable in from New York, who is like such a foundational DJ for myself, and I think just her impact as a artist, multidisciplinary artist, and as a DJ. She hasn't been in Detroit. She hasn't played in Detroit in I think about 5 years. So it's like I'm super excited. It's a big thing. And then we're also bringing out like Terrell Brook from LA. He's incredible. DJ Shannon from New York, who has like a really great podcast, Club Management, but also a great DJ. Kieran Laveau from Pittsburgh. And then locally we have Fabiola Deja, aka Black Moonchild. Yeah, kind of taking a thing and bringing it into the world and giving it legitimacy, and getting something to the production level that we've reached has just been a big feat. Like, Detroit is techno city, but Detroit government does not want people to dance. They don't want clubs to exist. It's just a constant fight. And it's also like a reality that there aren't many Black women producing dance music events in Detroit. And, I think it was a different case in the 90s where you had a lot of Black women promoters. But something over the past 20 years kind of shifted with that. And now there aren't really major clubs. There really aren't any clubs owned by Black women. There aren't any clubs who are employing Black women as primary bookers. There's just like a handful of independent women who are like just making it happen, like Blueprint, Auntie Chanel with her parties. Yeah, it's a it's a tough landscape, but we do it because we love it.
Yeah, I was wondering what the challenges are to throw your own events in Detroit. But then you just mentioned how difficult it is, and then people don't want people to dance, which when you say that and you look at, yeah, okay, it's movement, and people call it techno Christmas, right? It's hard to imagine that throughout the year or in general, it's actually, correct me if I'm wrong, I've been told before, there's not great support from the city.
I mean, namely, to get a liquor license in Detroit, you're paying $70,000 upwards, and that's on the low end. I've known people who've paid $250,000, or a quarter of a million. Why can't I say
$250,000?
$250,000 with it. But so that's just like, I know that like alcohol and dancing don't have to go together, but it's a major way to fund any kind of institution, right? So it's a financial gap from the city. It's a financial gap just like kind of as like individuals. Like none of my crew, we don't come from money. We all are struggling artists. I got laid off from my job like last year, and I'm like, shoot, like what is movement gonna look like if we don't get all these little pieces in order to afford it? And it's a space issue too. It's hard to find a rental to go past 2:00 or yeah. Like it's money, it's time, it's investment, and it's a lack of like opportunity to come into an institution and have any type of like autonomy or agency with how you want to program the night. We have a really great relationship with Spotlight. We do like a quarterly there. Rula is really fantastic. I actually think they've kind of changed the tide as much as possible in terms of promoting women promoters, and artists as well. But aside from them, it can just be really hard to break even. Yeah.
Congratulations on your party, and whoever sees this, make sure you come out and support.
Thank you.
I wanted to, you touched on it briefly, in a way. One of the topics that comes up on this podcast, or I bring it up because I'm genuinely interested, is mentorship, right? And rather than asking you who's your mentor and what have you been taught by your mentor, I'm wondering how, or what do you think about the intergenerational dialogue between the different generations as a whole within the music scene or industry in Detroit or in general, and what your opinion is in regards to like if there's things that you don't like, what would you like to see differently? I don't know if that's a good or bad question.
It's a great question, and it's super complicated because it's like there's a lot of intergenerational trauma within like music in general, right? Like, I think that there are people who have been really like abused by the system or who have just gotten really jaded, um, and who kind of project that onto like younger generations, right? I also think that it kind of works like you're an apprentice for a DJ if you're working at their label. And through that apprenticeship, like you kind of study them as artists, how they kind of manage like their label, and oftentimes you can absorb their beliefs and their personalities. And I think that when that starts to happen, sometimes like ingenuity can leave the room because you're seeing a pathway that's worked for this artist and you're deciding to take that pathway and you're staying within the confines of the pathway that they've already created. I mean, I've been really blessed to have some amazing mentors who I talk to weekly, and I don't just mean like DJs. I mean dancers, DJs, promoters, people, professors, older people who I go to for advice, comfort, friendship. And I've had some really bad ones too. You know, it's like the more you do in this industry, I think the more you're going to rub up against somebody who doesn't think that you should be doing that much. And that's been such a painful lesson too, where I'm just like, you know, I could go back and still kind of be in relationship with this person, but because they chose to feel some type of way about my success, just having to close that door. It sucks because I lost my mom when I was 20. So I think throughout my 20s, I've just developed a bit of a complicated relationship with folks who are older than me. You know, it's like kind of like filling in that gap a little bit. And it hurts a lot when those relationships don't work out. But when they do work out, it's just like John Collins is like such a strong lifeline for me. I kind of want to cry when I think about him. Like more than a mentor, he's a friend. And I wish that all like emerging artists had somebody like that in their lives. But I also don't think you need a mentor because I think that you can create something like spectacular just through your own experimentation. And low key, some of those DJs or artists are doing the most interesting things. So they didn't have a box that they had to stay inside of. So yeah, it's really complex. I feel like I've like come of age through like the guidance and like oversight of a lot of my OGs, but I've also been pushed back by some of the other ones. And I think that there's like a story there that will one day be told. But for now, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's just like a continuing lesson. I feel like with our elders in the industry, whoever we choose to be in contact with, or who we choose to have as our elders, and we also want to show respect. But then at the same time, sometimes it doesn't go both ways. So yeah, it's very intricate in that way.
It's intricate, and I think that the industry, especially when it comes to other women, can really kind of force upon this almost cannibalism of the generation before you. Like you kind of have to put like in some of my past employment or experiences, there have been other Black women who've been kind of like outed from those spaces. And as a part of my acceptance, I had to kind of be like, yeah, you know, she wasn't real or she wasn't this. And then kind of the more I grew and understood, the more I'm like, actually, like, you guys are really misogynistic. But once you acknowledge that, like, and kind of question, like, that, I think then you become the next person who can be cannibalized or proven as an example. And I think that's what we try to do with Blueprint, is to honor the women who've come before us, because like ageism like is a thing, and um just like legacy building, like it's complicated and it's really tough to see sometimes, but we book through like a really intergenerational lens, um because we want to say, you know, like, even if your work isn't like acknowledged in this way, um we know that what you did kind of paved the way for us to do what we do.
Hmm. That's beautiful. Yeah. Um, yeah, we're humans, so there's always difficult. Oh, I don't want to call it difficult, but there's always challenging situations or relationships, and then there's always the ones that are organic and beautiful and quote unquote easy in a way that, yeah, I guess organic is a better way. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like I'm lucky to have like a lot of friends where it's like we would be friends regardless of if we were in this or not, but because we are in it, it deepens that friendship. And then there are other people I'm like cool with, cordial with, but I'm like, we're connected through this one point. Yeah, but I love the organic stuff. You know, I seek it out. I'm like, ah.
Yeah, give me all the signs. I want to exactly. One more, I guess, question in regards to that. I'm wondering if there, like, some of the, let's call it, not positive experiences in within different generations that you had. Are you a person that um is, like you said, if you're not aware of it, you're there's a chance that you become the same as the previous generation. You fall into the same what's the word, trap or path. Um, when you recognize it, are you the person that like calls it out in whatever type of way, right? I'm not like saying write an article about everything that happens to you, but make people aware of it or mention it. And if so, do you feel like sometimes you get backlash just for actually stating the obvious?
Yeah, I call it like, I've been in situations where I'm like, wait, like what's happening? Like, just like it's not right, right? And other people might agree, but if the source of that is someone with a lot of power or influence, like, so like we're seeing a lot right now, like Thursday, May 22nd, this whole week we've had, and by no means am I comparing what I'm about to say to like my own reality, but we're seeing the court case from Diddy and Cassie, right? In the transcripts and the witnesses, and um, Dawn Richard, who, an artist I really love, she's being interviewed, and is talking about how she saw Diddy beat Cassie, you know what I mean, and how she didn't say anything because she feared for her own safety. But then they're also saying, you know, like even after that, you kind of kept coming back to get opportunities through him, and they're trying to discredit her as a witness or as a credible source because of it. But it's so complicated that, like, I don't judge people anymore if they don't speak up, because I know some people just do not have that within them. Like, I think that, like, and everybody has to kind of get through how they get through. Um, but I remember the first time I had a protest, I was like 7, and my mom had bought me like a fake fur jacket. I'm like, I'm not wearing fur. I don't want to kill animals. I eat meat, whatever. But it was just like that's just how I am, and I do think I faced a lot of backlash for it. I think that there's a lot of people who their entire lives their entire lives are kind of built on like a certain way of thinking or a certain way of being, and if you like kind of point out or talk about any kind of contradiction to it, like I would understand why they don't like me. You know what I mean? But I also think there's like a power structure that is unnamed but is really prominent, and that even if I get backlash for pointing it out or talking about it, I think that it kind of can maybe help somebody else in the future. I've seen just really silly things. I'm going to write about my memoir when I'm 72. But yeah, I think that when you speak truth to power, there's always backlash. But there's also always like progress.
Yeah. Thank you. 72 is a very specific age.
Right? Because, okay, I read an article where it's just like the first people who are gonna like regularly live to be like 100 have already been born. I'm like, okay, if I live to be 100, 72 would give me like 30 years to like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now I understand the theory behind it. Got it. I only have like a few questions left for almost at the end. I wonder in general, I think I mentioned earlier, like doing movement week, the city is so busy, right? And some of the folks, the local folks that I speak to sometimes, I'm like, oh yeah, that's not Detroit. Movement week is not Detroit. It is, but there's obviously so much other things and so many people that are not from Detroit who come to the city. I'm wondering if you have anything that you would like to say to out of towners that come to the city just for during that time of the year that you would like them to know.
Spend your money where it matters. Go to the record store, go to the small coffee store, go to the party like promoted by Detroiters, specifically like Black Detroiters. It's I know a lot of parties, myself included, a lot of our operating budget for the year comes from this weekend. And I think just like move respectfully. It's not like a playground. It's real people, like real homes, and also just like be responsible. I think that like forget that like yeah, 360 other days of the year, we're kind of fighting for any type of progress or any type of opportunity. So, yeah, support that when you can.
Thank you. That's beautifully said. Really briefly, since this podcast is called Dance to the Music, do you have 3 tracks that you could name me that remind you of dance?
Oh my God.
In any type of way?
Yeah. Evil by Earth, Wind, and Fire. It's like one of my favorite tracks. Into Your Story, which classic track, Jeremy Ellis, Kyle Say remix. Just whenever I play that, whenever I hear that, it just activates something within me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I was playing it out the other week, and there was a live pianist who started like riffing on top of it. There was a baby dance. I'm like, this. It's just like a activation track. You know what I mean? And then I really like. Oh my God, what is my third track? This is terrible, right? Because it's just like, okay, pick your.
Like, I know, and you're not the only one. Don't feel bad. Yeah.
I would have to say Stars by Naomi Daniels.
I love that one.
It's so beautiful. Like I'm like thinking about it, but it's a really optimistic and like beautiful track. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, my last question is just to give you the option of, maybe saying something that I haven't asked you or that you really want to get off your chest or that I haven't spoken about enough during the last, I don't even know how long we've been sitting here.
What's for you is for you. And I think that's like whenever, I mean, this week has been really, really difficult. We've had all these issues, and still, I just know next week I'm going to be sitting down talking about how much fun I had. Um, but that's because it's like there's no like single entity, single person um, that can change like your purpose in life or kind of your pathway in life, even though it can feel like it. I think that it's always going to kind of be pushing towards what it's supposed to be.
Thank you. That was beautiful. It's like you make me cry.
Yeah.
So once again, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time of the crazy week. All the crazy stuff that may have happened that is not happening anymore, or like that, maybe was cause of some headaches. No, I really appreciate you being here and taking the time and talking.
Thank you. I appreciate you too, Mariella.
Thank you.
Where
can people find your writing if there is one, or like where can people find you online? And then I'm sure there's links to everything somewhere.
Instagram, probably Disco and Tell Pro, SoundCloud, which I think is like Etta Sounds. Yeah, when I put my Substack back up, I'll let you guys know.
Okay, cool. That sounds good. Thank you everybody for watching and listening.